Zoom is a little bit different on Canvas. And if you do me a favor, if you would just mute your microphone, except when you're getting ready to jump in. Because we're using the Regent University Zoom account that's connected to Canvas, I get a lot of information that I wouldn't otherwise. So it connects to everything else we do on Canvas. And that's kind of, sometimes students have trouble with Canvas. They find another way to get on. There's more than one way to get on a Zoom meeting. But it's so good to see all of you here tonight. Now, my purpose is to give you an overview of our class. It's not really a class. If you had an opportunity to read my first video announcement, 897 is the chaplain. It's the candidacy phase of your doctoral program. And so while it's organized as a class, it is, you don't get a grade for it. You pass it or you don't pass it. I find passing it is not difficult. It's not difficult. So if you will, here's Daniel. If you jump in week 1 and just follow the rhythm of the class, which is it is intensive, but it's also designed to guarantee success, because the goal is for you to finish, quite frankly, 897 with a really great proposal. Derico, I remember you, brother. And also you will do your integrative exam along the way as well. A part of, in fact, this class used to be called integrative exam. It still is an important element of the class. If you will keep up with it week by week, you will pass easily. In fact, it's not unusual, to be honest, for some students who are, gung-ho focused folks, to finish 897 2 or 3 weeks early. But if you just decide, well, how hard can it be, and you kind of slide along, jump in and out. I've actually had a couple of students that waited till there were 2 weeks left and tried to jump in and do the whole thing. I said, that's not possible. This is an intensive academic exercise that's designed to prepare you to do very, very well in your dissertation phase. It works. And it's not, you are smart people or you wouldn't be here tonight. So it's just a matter of dealing with the kind of the technical details and the protocols, etc., that will be very much a part of your dissertation phase. So I'm going to call up a presentation that I designed for you. And hopefully you will be able to see it fine. I'm going to go over to slideshow and get it. Can all of you see this fine? Does it appear? Okay. As you know, the view of all of the participants is controlled on the upper right-hand corner, and you can use those options, those settings, to control your own view. So let me jump in. I'm going to do some general stuff, but I want to focus on the statement of the problem question this evening and do the best I can. A Doctor of Ministry program is very, very unique. I think it can be helpful to compare it to a PhD program. So if you were doing a PhD, not only would you have more courses, but also it would be your project would involve testing hypotheses. It would be a lot of statistical analysis. It would be a lot of quantitative data collection and analysis, etc. Whereas the Doctor of Ministry program is called, it's a professional degree. It's an applied research degree. Whereas a PhD is a pure research degree. That's what we call it. In fact, the PhD is the only pure research doctorate. Every other doctorate is applied, whether it be an MD or a JD or an EdD. It doesn't matter what it is. Every other doctorate is a professional doctorate, which means it's designed to research real live situations with real human beings in them, real a real research context in which there is a challenge or an opportunity to find out what can we do to get this to work better, etc. It ends up being a real practical applied research. So for that reason, the statement of the problem question is unique when it comes to the Doctor of Ministry program. So let me do real quickly a review of the 897 candidacy experience, which is where we are at now tonight. It's designed primarily to lead to a final proposal. Your final proposal really will be the basis for chapter 1 of your dissertation. So you are literally engaged in composing the first piece of your dissertation in this class. But it also is the piece that introduces your research. And so ultimately you're writing for an audience of one, namely Dr. Flynn. But then after Flynn, your proposal is sent on to the chair that he appoints for you. And it also gives that person a sense of what it is you want to do. And so it ends up having multiple uses in terms of the proposal. And for that reason is very, very important. So we will end up reviewing several key, I think of them as skill sets, to be honest. They're skills that you need to have mastered to a significant degree so that you can just zoom through the dissertation phase and not get stuck along the way. So we're going to review a research design and methodology. Research design, your project design is all about the kinds of instruments you want to use, you hope to use to collect data. Methodology is about how you propose to analyze the data. Is it going to be qualitative? Is it going to be quantitative? Is it going to be mixed methods? Those are all very, very important. Then we're going to review doctoral academic writing, formal academic research and writing. One of the things I find helpful for our Doctor of Ministry students, and I'm a Doctor of Ministry graduate myself, so I love the DMIN program, is that we tend to have a difficult time writing with what the Writing Center calls the scholarly tone. Scholarly tone. We tend to write like we're preaching or conducting a Bible study, maybe occasionally doing a little pastoral counseling, whatever it is, sometimes even more of a conversational tone. So learning this style of writing is also a piece of 897 that you will find is very, very important. In fact, there's a document from the Writing Center called a scholarly tone, which I have included in our resources. Integrative exam is just an opportunity for you to reflect systematically on your experience in the Doctor of Ministry program. It's coming later in the semester. Ultimately, 897 is designed to prepare you for 899. And so that will be the dissertation phase. Once you have successfully completed 897, you are literally classified as a doctoral candidate, which means that you could, if you wanted to, sign your name, whatever it is, first and last name, DMIN, and in parenthesis, ABD, which means all but dissertation. And it has academic value. And so the candidacy phase is very, very important in and of itself. And then, of course, you will be able to begin the human subjects review process, which is the first step in 899. But if you have time at the end, again, some of you will finish a bit early, you can actually start that process. And one of the last things we'll do together is look at the HSR process so that you can anticipate moving into 899, which it sounds horrible, but really it's fairly simple. I find that most doctoral students, if they get bogged down, it's because they're making it more complicated than it needs to be. My encouragement, even to 899 students, is simplify. You need to be focused. You need to be concise and precise. No unnecessary verbiage. You're not here to persuade anybody. You're here to report, etc. And so I would like to encourage you to realize that it's probably going to work better if it's simpler than you think it might be when it comes to especially how you conduct your project and write your dissertation. The 897 resources are in Canvas under the modules section. So when you go down to modules, then you go down there, the 8 modules, but underneath that, there's a whole list of resources, all of which are relevant for you. And so I want to encourage you to begin to explore those. Now, to be honest, the 2 biggest factors in formatting issues, and formatting issues are often the ones that kill doctoral students, frankly. So the 2 resources that are most important with formatting issues, obviously, Turabian 9th edition. And there is, I think I left you a link. If I didn't, I'll add it to the Turabian Quick Guide. It's literally in the Turabian website. And they have a section called the Quick Guide, which gives you almost everything you need, quite frankly. I'm a big fan of, if I can find a shorter way to do it, I want to do it that way. So the Turabian, and then Microsoft Word, getting Microsoft Word to work for you in what you have to do with dissertation writing. It's really mostly about turning off all the default settings before you start to compose. I've given you a series of, I even made a short video myself of how to turn off all of the Word default settings and reset it to be ready for your work. And so they're simple things, but without taking them into consideration, it makes your work just that much more really kind of irritating. I mean, if you kept getting, for me, I like to tell students in 897, look, your proposal doesn't need to be perfect. Your dissertation must be perfect. And so if I'm preparing you for 899, I will occasionally do some editing for you. I'll send you a version of a document. I'm saying I've done a bit of editing on this document. Take a look at the following, etc. And it will be an opportunity for you to review some of those issues. When you're in 899, your chair is not going to do editing for you. So if there is a formatting issue, you will get a note saying you have significant formatting issues, try again. Now, you don't want to get that message. I mean, that's just well, this is not helpful. That's like when my GPS in my car tells me to proceed to route. I said, really? How is that helpful? I was hoping you would tell me how to proceed to my route. So I find 897 is our best opportunity to work together to review some of those really basic, simple, easy ideas that will make your 899 experience just really a breeze for you. Now let's talk about Module 1. Of course, and I took some time in my first, my Welcome to Week 1 video announcement to look at the structure of 897. I'm always going to take time to unpack the weeks more specifically. Week number 1 is the first peer review assignment. Peer review assignments also take place in your discussion group. So you don't go anywhere else for them. We call them peer review, first of all, because there's a document that's attached to that assignment that's very, very important. It describes the details of that assignment and then gives you kind of a rubric to use to provide some helpful feedback to other members of your group. That's why we call it a peer review assignment, still in your discussion group. So week 1, you have the first one, very important, and this is what we'll spend most of our time on tonight, the statement of the problem question. And so you will simply put, it's 1 sentence. So you will post 1 sentence, maybe a little bit of a statement as to, why you came to that. It's a research question, essentially, and then provide feedback to one another. I will always jump in. When it comes to peer review assignments, I will very actively jump in and participate. and provide you with my own feedback, simply because those assignments are particularly important. But then ultimately, when we get down to week 2, it's a discussion forum, but it asks you to provide an annotated bibliography. Now, all of you were in PMIN 700. You did an annotated bibliography, so this should not be an assignment you do from scratch, but it might be something you want to review from 700. And so you will post your list of key resources in Turabian style, and then you will have an opportunity to provide comment to one another on your key resources. And I'll jump in too and maybe have something to say, but this is not as important per se as the peer review assignments, but that will come up week 2. And hopefully it will be just a review of what you already did for 700. Now, let me focus on the main thing tonight. The statement of the problem question. Generally, we would call this the research question. And if you were in a PhD program, they would call it the research question. The reason why we call it the statement of the problem question is that it more clearly identifies the uniqueness of Doctor of Ministry research. And so because you are dealing with a research context that involves real human beings, a real ministry context that has usually a ministry element that you're concerned about and that you would like to address, take time to see if you can find a way to improve upon it or whatever it might be. It's practical, it's applied research. So that's why we call it this, the statement of the problem question. And that's why this one sentence is structured the way it is. So I think hopefully it'll be helpful. Now this there is a document, a peer-reviewed document in week 1 in that assignment that has this information, but I wanted to discuss it together so you could see. You remember, you're not going to end up doing a research paper. That's not what you're going to do. You're going to do unique empirical research. Now, when I say empirical research, I mean research that involves collecting and analyzing data. That's all that means. So you're not going to write like a master's thesis where you're going to explore a topic and you're going to dig into it, pro and con. You will do some of that in your literature chapters, but that's really not the focus of your research. The statement of the problem question is focused on your research and on your ministry project. But for that reason, it's very, very important that it be worded just exactly the way you want it worded. Remember this, when it comes to a research, every word of your research question, every word of your statement of the problem question will need to be researched. It will need to be supported in an evidence-based way. That's why we often times say when it comes to formal academic writing, it should have no unnecessary words, because you're going to have to do something with that word. I usually tell students, try to avoid adjectives. This was the greatest. Okay, you're going to have to provide evidence to prove that it's the greatest. Are you sure you want to do that? That could add a year to your program. No, I don't want to do that. Well, then try to be less, just give us the facts. That's the thing with formal academic writing. It's formal, but just give us the facts. Just tell us in as simple, concise terms as you can what you want to do. So these are the 5 elements that need to be in your statement of the problem question. And I think by looking at them together, hopefully it will help to clarify the uniqueness of stating a research question in the Doctor of Ministry program. So, excuse me, first of all, it needs to be a question. Now that seems to be obvious, doesn't? So a question means that you're not reporting, you're not stating a subject to research. You're identifying a question you want to provide. Usually we would say, you remember in 700, we would say you're proposing an intervention to be tested. So you want to examine a specific ministry context in a practical way, and you want to do it in a way that will enable you to collect and analyze data. So obviously you're asking a question. You don't know the answer to the question until you know. So you don't know the findings of your research until you know the findings. And in some cases, a DMIN student may want to provide support for their favorite program. Well, no, that's not what you're doing. This is not a brochure. It's not a handbook. This is it's empirical research. And so you're describing specifically how you're going to conduct and why you're going to conduct that research. So it needs to be a question. Number two, a problem. Now, we maybe don't, we're ministers, so I don't know, the problem is our favorite word. It's a challenge, it's an opportunity. You know how it goes. You have identified what you think of is a weakness or what appears to be a weakness in a ministry context, and you would like to examine it so you can help at that point. And so when you state something about the problem, when you identify it, you're defining the problem to be investigated. You want to know something about it that will give you helpful conclusions that can provide positively to that ministry situation. There are a couple of things that are a little more difficult to get at, but I think you'll be able to see it. Your statement of the problem question also implies project design. Project design, again, in the big sense of the word, refers to the instruments that you would like to use to collect data. Well, you're not going to say a lot about that in your research question, but the wording of your question summarizes the sense of the design, the approach you will take to solving the problem. What is it? What is the data that you're going to go after and look for and generate to begin with? And that's a little more subtle, but it needs to be seen in some kind of way. And I'll demonstrate it here in a moment. Your research question will also deal with research methodology, which basically says, how do you propose to analyze the data you collect? Research methodology is about qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods of analysis. So you're going to find some simple way to summarize how you will measure the results of your approach. What is it that you really want to see at the end, generally, not specifically? How are you going to measure? How are you going to approach analyzing? Now, to be honest, I know, because I have 899 students, I am aware that some of them have to change that a bit as they're conducting their research. So it's not uncommon for me to hear a student say, I was hoping to be able to do a quantitative analysis of this data set, this data, but I don't think it's going to work. Do you think it'll be okay to do a qualitative analysis? And if so, what will that look like? So you're implying, but you're really not stating, because some, research is always a bit of it's a work in progress. But you need to have some sense of what it is you're looking for. The location I highlight because it's extremely important. Because this is applied research, you need to have a very clear research context. You need to say it as clearly as you can. That is to say, where will you conduct your research? Among whom will you collect data? And then how will you do that, et cetera. And so having a very clear, specific identification of your location, very, very important. Now, this is kind of it's a longer sentence, but if this is just a one sentence a description of your research question, I wanted to show you a good example and an example that's not so great. So you can see kind of what that looks like. Also, I have posted actually a document in Canvas that has sample research questions, samples of a statement of the problem question that you can look at as well. Some of them are better than others. They're not models, they're samples, but they're samples that worked originally. And so this is the example that's in the peer-reviewed document that you have in your assignment in week 1. Here's the question: what should constitute an effective and contextualized curriculum for training lay leaders to discern their ministry calling in the inner city Assemblies of God churches of Annapolis, Maryland. Now that's straightforward. There are no unnecessary words. It's very clear, very precise, and it gives us all the information we need in order to draw a target, in order to draw a bullseye on the target. So first of all, obviously it's a question, what should? The question again is important because we don't know what we're going to find until we find it. So it needs to be a question. What should? Then the problem is pretty clear, I think. The problem is training lay leaders to discern their ministry calling. That's what we want to, that's the ministry context we want to explore specifically, and explore in such a way that we can end up with some helpful ideas and suggestions at the end of the project. The design in this case is indicated by the phrase contextualize curriculum. Now, usually in a DMIN program, we would call that an educational intervention. An educational intervention is the easiest one. I hate to tell you, don't use it unless it's going to work for you. You want to do whatever you have to do to gather useful data. An educational intervention means that you're going to have some kind of an educational piece, maybe a seminar, maybe a workshop, maybe kind of a short, small group presentation of content. But before you teach the content, you will have a pre-test. And after you're done teaching the content, you will have a post-test, the exact same test, but you will have a post-test to see what they learned. Now, literally is that easy. So that will be, and usually then you need to add some additional data sets in order, as they say in research methods, in order to triangulate the data. But this is the heart in this particular project. This is the heart of it. A contextualized curriculum, a curriculum that is not necessarily relevant to everybody, but is relevant to certain kinds of people. Methodology is implied by the word constitute and effective. So how can we measure effectiveness? That really is the question when it comes to this research question. How do we know it's effective? Well, we're going to test, we're going to propose an intervention, and then we're going to test it. And as a result of testing it, we'll know something about its effectiveness. And so those simple words then give us a sense of what it is this particular doctoral student wants to do and why he or she wants to do it. And then the location, again, always needs to be very clear and specific. In this particular case, it's in the inner city Assemblies of God churches of Annapolis, Maryland. And again, this person will need, access. In other words, they will need permission. In some cases, I would want to say, okay, how many inner city churches are there in Annapolis, Maryland? Are there only 3 or 4? Well, yes. Well, then that's maybe okay. If there are 10, that's too many. So you need to identify a smaller group within the group. So you have a reasonable, achievable research project. You don't want to take more time. It's important for your research to be highly focused. And then having collected and analyzed data in that highly focused project will lead to all kinds of amazing applications down the road. So this is the example. This is in, again, on your peer review document. Very, very clear, very clear. And I think it's good to kind of have it in front of you when you go. Now, here's another one that I think has some problems. And I will discuss the problems with you as we go along. One of the problems is that it's too wordy. There are too many words. They're unnecessary words. And remember, everything in your statement of the problem question will need to be researched. So do you want to say that? Because if you do, you're going to have to research that thing. Is that really what you want to do? So those are the questions. Again, we need to be as focused and as precise as possible. Here's this statement of the problem question. What paradigm of holistic care might a chaplain develop for the spiritual and social well-being of the aging geriatric residents, along with their families, at the Wesley Graceland Gardens, a long-term care and rehabilitation facility in Memphis, Tennessee, where the facility does not recognize, address, or affirm the whole person. Okay, fine. So we see that there is a clear ministry context, a clear ministry issue that this person has in his or her heart, has a vision for. But remember, the research question needs to very clearly result in a research project. So first of all, question, is it a question? Yes, what might? So although it's not overly specific, it's good enough. It's good enough. So what might? So we want to know that we don't know what we're going to find until we find it. So we state it that way. So what is the problem? It's the spiritual and social well-being of an aging geriatric residents, along with their families, where the facility does not recognize, address, or affirm the whole person. Now, I have a feeling all of you could already begin to take this apart. Every single word is going to have to be researched and defined. And so the question I would want to know for this student was, first of all, spiritual and social well-being. Now, you're going to have to define that. Are you sure you want to collect and analyze data that addresses both spiritual and social well-being, having clearly defined what that means? Do you want to collect and analyze data that measures that? Okay, aging geriatric residents, I take a little, umbrance when it comes to that. I didn't know I was elderly till COVID, and I found out that I was. But it's okay, aging geriatric residents. If any of you have been in a skilled nursing facilities, you know that not all of them are real old. So that's going to need to be, maybe it might benefit from some definitions, along with their families. Now, do you want to research the spiritual and social well-being of the residents and their families? Is that not two research projects? Do you want to do both? No, these are questions to ask. Where the facility does not recognize, address, or affirm the whole person. Now, obviously, you're going to have to prove that. And that's completely unnecessary. That does not add anything whatsoever to a research project. That's just your opinion. So please leave it out. Again, this is an example of what could be more than is needed. A project design is really quite good. A paradigm of holistic care. One of the things you can do in terms of project design is that you're looking for a model or a paradigm. So it's broader than an educational intervention. Rather, it's looking for a broader model, a more holistic model, obviously, that may involve some kind of an educational intervention, but not necessarily. It could be that there will be a series of interviews. It could be this student will want to do a literature review, looking at documents, etc., looking for evidence concerning the current paradigm or model of care, and then comparing that as to what may or may not be better. A research methodology is implied under might a chaplain develop for. Now that's a bit of a curveball, because it looks like this researcher is going to develop it. Now the research wants to find out what a chaplain is going to develop. So now we need to engage chaplains, because this is for chaplains. And so that is a little bit, okay, that's kind of on the side, but because the words are in the research question, we need to engage chaplains in the research process. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to generate your own relevant data, or do you want to find a way to train chaplains how to do it? What is it that you want to do? You see how this research question works. And then the location, of course, is the Wesley Graceland Gardens, a long-term care and rehabilitation facility in Memphis, Tennessee. I think that's okay. I think that's okay. And this student likes to be a bit wordy, but I think this is fine. Again, the location, the research context needs to be very, very clearly and specifically defined. And I think that that works very well for them in this situation. So a research question with some problems that just needed more focus, more definition. What exactly do you want to do? And how do you want to do it? Recognizing that there's got to be a specific context in which you are going to gather and analyze helpful data in a way that will result in meaningful, useful findings at the end. Now, I thought what I would do, and I'm going to just go ahead and stop sharing, folks, is see whether or not you would like to, because some of you have been working on this all the way back to 700, PMIN 700, and you've been thinking about it. You know, what exactly would you like to do when it comes to your project? And then the dissertation is just the report of the project, providing literature background and the description of your project. So really the main thing is your ministry project. And I know you've been thinking about it, but I wanted to take some time to see whether or not any of you would like to say, okay, I've been thinking about this, and then read off what you have so far in terms of your statement of the problem question. And then let's take a moment to consider it together. Anybody like to do that? Go ahead and you can raise your little virtual hand or just indicate that you're ready to go.
I don't see my hand raising button, so I'll just go.
I wonder where that is actually. Is that under React?
It might be under more.
I think it's under React at the bottom.
React.
So give it to us, Kevin, and then we're going to move over to Miss Lauren.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of law enforcement chaplaincy, and you know, I love the wording of the example that you did, sir, and so mine is, what should constitute an effective contextualized law enforcement chaplain training curriculum for the chaplains of Shreveport, Louisiana, to assist with crisis and routine on-scene interaction.
Yeah, I like that though, Kevin. If anything, I would move some of the wording over so that you end up with the location at the end. But I think you are identifying everything you need to know up front in terms of the specific ministry context you want to research, the ministry issue that you want to research, kind of a sense early on of how you maybe would like to conduct that research. I would like all of you to remember, and I'll remind us of this as we go, that the details of your project design are only settled when you have completed an HSR application at the beginning of 899. Up until that point in time, you have some ideas of what you like to do and how you like to do it. But it's really Dr. Flynn, having gone through your application, your HSR application, who will sign off on, okay, this is your project. Once he signs off on your project, then your dissertation chair can't change it. Your second reader can't change it. I mean, that's your project. So what you do in 897 is kind of hopeful. It's wishful in the sense that this is what you would like to do. That's why it's okay to be a little general, Kevin, as you have done with your research question, enough to give us a sense of where you want to go without necessarily trying to tie you down to any specifics at this point. I think that works very well, Kevin. That's excellent. Miss Lauren, what did you have?
Yes, Dr. Asplund. So my passion is discipleship, and I facilitated, and I have a passion for teaching discipleship. So the problem was after the pandemic, I really noticed that there were a lot of people that weren't coming back physically to learn. So we didn't have a way at that time to technically teach them like online. So that was the problem. And the question was, what should constitute an effective contextualized technology-based strategy designed to disciple new believers at New Life Church in Kempsville, Virginia?
Oh, that's excellent. What an exciting project. I'm aware of a couple of PhD dissertations that kind of bumped into that as well. That's so good. I like it, Lauren. All the elements are there. They're there succinctly stated in good order. I think that gives you a sense of where to go from there. You know, it also will guide your literature review when you do, for us, you know, the summary of the literature and the BTH Foundations, chapters 2 and 3 of your dissertation. It will guide that as well. So I think that's very, very well stated, Lauren. I like it, and I'm excited about what you will find. I mean, that research seems to be very important. The technology is not going away. I don't know if any of you remember being introduced to Zoom for the first time. As a teacher, I remember it all too well. And it was either at the beginning of COVID or when it came to Regent. Our Regent folks are high-tech savvy. I think it's because of CBN, frankly. And so they had trained all of the faculty on the use of the technology before COVID, so that when COVID hit, we were ready. And Regent University grew during COVID, whereas there was any number of other schools that just closed their doors. And so the technology is not going away. And I think being able to stay on top of it and find effective uses of it. And I wonder, you know, because I'm an older guy now, so I'm wondering if our Gen Z guys, you know, or the millennial kids, they may prefer other kinds of technology, some of which I've never heard of. So I think being able to address some of those generational differences, I would suggest, Lauren, I would hope would be very helpful. I'm looking forward to seeing what you find out.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Could I limit that just to the one campus, or do you think it would be better to measure, we have more than one campus, the discipleship class maybe at another campus that has no online streaming or anything, measure that against one that has like a hybrid, measure the results, the effectiveness?
You know, I would do, one of the things that's always true, Lauren, is when you're doing your research, you want to have supplementary data sets, which are often in the form of interviews, or perhaps even something like a focus group, which is a group interview, maybe a survey, because you have like the core of your research. And I can easily see that it might benefit from being in a context that has some use of technology. But then you want to find out these other issues on the side, like, okay, what if you don't have, if you're not using technology, why, what would it take for you to engage in it? What would you think about? So I find some of those supplementary data sets that all are taken into consideration when it comes to data analysis can be helpful. So think in terms of the main way you want to collect data, and then terms you want to do some other data collection along the side as well.
Thank you. That was my idea. Surveys and focus groups. Yep. Thank you.
There you go. You know, it's supposed to be fun. So I'm telling you, Kevin, if you guys are excited about your project and you kind of like research, you know, it's supposed to be fun. So I would anticipate that you enjoy the entire process. Jonathan, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to read the question or the statement of the problem as I wrote it in PMIN 700. because I'm still sticking, I think I'm still sticking with that same topic, but this is how it was worded. So how effective is the uniting of historical liturgical structures and charismatic openness in reclaiming worship as spiritual formation of disciples in the context of a local suburban evangelical church within the Wesleyan theological tradition?
No, I like it. A very, very interesting topic, Jonathan. I think I would aim more, my suggestion, Jonathan, would be that you aim more at an instrument, a data collecting instrument or primary instrument. The reason why I say that is I recall from your early wording that you were concerned about effectiveness. Give me your wording again, Jonathan.
Yes. How effective is the uniting of?
Yeah, so, and that's kind of a question that you hope to answer at the end of your project. So chapter 5 of the dissertation are your findings. I love chapter 5. It's my favorite chapter in the dissertation because then you're suggesting possible applications, additional research, how it's going to affect your own personal ministry, etc. Chapter 5 is wonderful. So you want to draw conclusions about effectiveness at the end. Try to think about how are you going to test this? What kind of an intervention would you propose? Is it going to be a series of small group meetings, maybe supplemented with some interviews? Think in terms of how it is you want to test so that you can come up with an effectiveness finding at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the rationale for the research is looking at there are a number of historical examples where worship serves as the primary spiritual formation, and that we've sort of separated worship from discipleship only post Great Awakening, where we have a revivalist approach to worship, where worship really isn't worship. And it's not what it was in the early church. It's more of, it's an evangelistic event rather than a formation.
And we're
and when you see, where you do see the ancient liturgical forms of worship, you very rarely see an openness to the charism of the Holy Spirit. Where you do see an openness to the Holy Spirit, you rarely see any liturgical structure, any historical structure. So, putting those two together. So it's really a desire to put those two together. The way that I would intend to test this, I mean, is really through holding a worship, a series of worship events, a worship practicum, if you will. And in PMIN 700, I talked about perhaps creating a group that was also going through somewhat of a small group experience, learning about these historical structures of worship. But I've since thought that, well, that really maybe shades the experience a little bit, so that it's not purely worship. So maybe there needs to be a control group of people who are merely coming in, and all the experience is the worship service. There's no small group experience, no teaching that goes along with it. But the way,
I like that.
But the idea of doing some kind of surveys before and after to measure. So with all that, do you think is it a matter of wording the question and going from how effective to, asking a what type question?
I think, again, you're thinking about how you want to collect data. So I like your idea. I think I would ask what would constitute an effective experience or something like that would demonstrate, what it is that you hope to learn. One of the qualitative methods that I rarely see is participant observation. In other words, you're going into a worship experience. It would be nice to go into one of each kind and then maybe one that's hybrid and just take notes. When you're there, observe, write down your observations. Your notes literally are a data set. I think it's also okay to have either a small group or to put together your own small group as a focus group and ask them relevant questions. I think if it were me, I would also want to maybe survey some pastors. If you could survey like a music minister along with a senior pastor, or, everybody on the team has a different perspective. But I think it's excellent. My goodness sakes, yes, I think it's excellent to be able to, and let me tell you my experience, Jonathan. One of the applications is in a multicultural congregation. So for several years, I pastored a church in rural Georgia that was majority Black. It was 60% African American, 40% white in LaGrange, Georgia. If you're in the South, they call it Strange LaGrange. It's the most stereotypical Georgia community. And that congregation loved one another. But did you know the big issue that we had to always work on was the music side of worship? We didn't want, the music couldn't be too vanilla or too chocolate either. We needed to have a chocolate sundae somehow. In other words, our worship experience needed to lead everyone into the presence of the Lord in a way that was going to nurture their soul. And it was a continual, we had to work at it continually. So I think there are a lot of applications and implications of your research, Jonathan. And I would encourage you to imagine putting yourself in a situation to collect useful data so that you can come up with helpful suggestions. And then certainly your literature reports in chapters 2 and 3 they're gonna unpack the background and all the relevant issues. That will be very important for you. But in the end, your project is just going to be you measuring what it is that you want to measure so you can analyze it. Very good stuff, though, Jonathan. I like it a lot. Mr. Joseph, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. Okay, so wow. The reason why I want to ask my question was because it's very basic, and like I'm listening to these my peers, and they're like brilliant, and their questions are brilliant, and mine is not. So I just want to make sure, like, I want to make sure I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
So this is my basic question. Can a discipleship program provide the necessary information for effectual discipleship and evangelistic training strategies for the Evangelical Brethren Church serving Christ in Hanover, Pennsylvania community?
Again, just like to a degree, Joseph, like I mentioned to Jonathan, I think you have almost everything you need in terms of identifying the problem per se, as well as the location. Those end up being the two most important elements in the research question. But in order to ask the question in a way that will create a bullseye on the target for your research, you want to try to imagine how you would like to collect relevant data. And then your research question is going to factor that in. Is it going to be, a workshop? Is it going to, whatever it is that you want to be? As we were talking to Lauren, you usually have a main way that you're collecting data, but then you have supplementary data sets as well. So if you can think about the main way, is it going to be an educational intervention? A discipleship book for both of you is extremely important. And I certainly agree, Lauren, that COVID revealed how little discipleship we actually had in the church. whether it was in person or not. I remember back in the day when people used to comment on the Christian education gap in the American church. Basically, what it was referring to was all the cases in which Sunday school had gone away. So how are we teaching Bible to our kids? So I remember people commenting on that, and I think it led to observing a discipleship gap. So this is like a major, because the Great Commission is about making disciples. So I think, Joseph, you have another great emphasis. You've identified it well. You have the main elements there. Just try to imagine the main way you want to go about. You're going to propose an intervention and you're going to test it. So the main way that you want to go about collecting data and include that in your research question will be just perfect.
Okay, thank you.
I like all of your visions, guys, for research. You're going to do some powerful work. You need to, of course, that as doctoral students, you're going to make a scholarly contribution to the body of Christ that will bear fruit for many years to come. This is a unique opportunity. I know it's hard work. I do know that. But I would want your vision to have a significant level of inspiration and enthusiasm for the powerful ways the Lord can use your work in the coming years. I'm excited about that. Well, my friends, I want to pray over you before I let you go. It's almost dinner time here. It's early on the West Coast. And so Kevin's only 2 hours away, as I recall, Shreveport. I spent most of my life growing up. I'm a Midwesterner by birth. So I grew up in Minnesota and spent most of my adult life in Missouri. But I like the West Coast. I like the Pacific Northwest. I don't know that I would like California. I hate to tell you. But I like where I'm at. And I just appreciate having wonderful students. I'm so happy to see Hideki with us from Tokyo, which has, he's going to have awesome opportunities, all of you, awesome opportunities to make kingdom contributions, not only for the present, for the coming generation as well. So let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for these great students. What an honor it is. What a privilege to partner with them in this important phase of their doctoral program. I thank you for clarity, for insight, for revelation. Thank you even for a fresh anointing as they go through this process. Just spark in their hearts and minds pictures of what it is that you're going to have them do, and to be able to see the difference that it's going to make. I pray for encouragement. I pray for provision. I pray for their families, that you would protect them and keep them well. I thank you for your favor resting upon each one in their good work. I pray that you would bless them now. And just give us wisdom and guide us as we partner together in this process in the next few weeks. We thank you for that and give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you, my good friends. It's going to be good being in this experience together this coming semester.